Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Full. Breathing out heavily, Shiro had a frown on her face as this was getting harder and harder to anticipate. She had come close to being hit multiple times, but her body control allowed her to escape the orbs at the last minute. This wasn't helped by the fact that she couldn't see anything since she had to rely heavily on her ears and skin. With so many orbs flying around, the moment she misjudged one of the orbs, it would be akin to a domino effect where she'll be hit from multiple directions. Nimi wanted to suggest some tips, but with how things are right now, she didn't want to distract Shiro. Gritting her teeth, Shiro continued to struggle against the orbs as she decided to do something drastic to try to help increase her chances of success. Clicking her tongue, she quickly rolled up her sleeves so that she could feel the wind pressure against her skin better. While this did provide her a little bit of help, it was still quite limited. Stomping down as hard as she could, a shockwave spread out as it managed to slow down the orbs just by a little, giving her some respite from the bombardment to think about a plan. However, since she couldn't use her skills and any use of mana to reinforce her body would just make things much harder, it was difficult to actually think of anything at this point. Should I just give up? Surely I would have reached S rank right. The moment this notion appeared in her mind, her movements hesitated a little as she was almost hit by one of the orbs. Thankfully, she was able to dismiss this thought quickly and regain her footing. When the F***ck did the notion give up appear in something I focus my mind to. Am I going to give up on revenge? Am I to give up on classing up because the requirements are too hard? Shiro, when the hell did you become someone so weak-willed? She reprimanded herself since she had already stated that she'll try her best at this test. And giving up halfway through because she stuck was not trying her best. In her mind, trying her best is when she continues to struggle despite being hit. Trying her best was when it's either succeed or fail through death. There was no in between, and this shouldn't be an exception either. Pulling her arms back, she tensed her muscles to the point where you could see her muscles despite her soft-looking arms. Piss off, she shouted out in anger as she punched the orb dead in the center. Focusing her mind on the sensations in her arms, she rushed forwards and punched everything in her way. As long as she was quick and flexible enough, she wouldn't need to worry too much about the orbs behind her. She just needed to keep making a space for her to be in front of her, and everything will be okay. If that didn't work, then she'll move on to something else. Bang, 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 bang. Continuing at this pace, her arms started to tire out as she had forced her body into a state similar to her berserk skill. Her arms were feeling the effects of muscle fatigue as the debuff would flicker on and off in her system. This isn't going to work. My arm's range is simply too short to give me enough room. To begin with, I was never the best at hand-to-hand combat, she thought to herself while pivoting on her foot. In terms of physical combat, her most used body part to attack was definitely her legs. It provided her with great range and power at the expense of speed and balance. But with her body control, the balance was countered. However, that still left the problem of speed. If I follow up with my movement, the gap would be too big to cover up quickly. She furrowed her brows. Sure, she could try to slow the orbs down with wind pressure, but that can only do so much in this situation. I need more efficient movements that involve both my hands and feet. Attack then retract at a moment's notice. Time seemed to slow down as she kicked out with her leg. She could feel the wind slowly travel past her skin as her muscles contracted. While the momentum that she created right now was superb and was much higher than normal, there was no way that she could retract her leg in time to block the next attack. I can't use mana in this situation. The moment I do, the orbs will speed up. She frowned. However, subconsciously, she already knew of the answer. I need speed. Speed and efficiency is what I need to pass this test. The current formation can recognize the moment I use mana, but it's not instantaneous. I just need to be faster than the test. Breathing out heavily, it was as if a cage had just been opened. Just as her foot came into contact with the orb, she immediately pulsed her mana to create a cushion on the contact point to force her leg back. Boom. Recoiling from the collision, her foot was able to return to the starting point in time to block the next attack. Unfortunately, it wasn't fast enough as the orbs sped up for the instant that her mana was utilized. Faster, more efficient. Ignore the faulty pathways. Find the fastest route to deploy the spell and detonate it as soon as possible. Asterisk boom 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 boom. As she continued to try to find the fastest way to utilize her mana, her movement speed was inching towards the next level. Outside of the chamber, the director was growing more excited with every passing second. Yes, that's it. Beat the test in raw speed. Deploy your mana in the most efficient and deadly way possible. Much like how the Big Bang was depicted, attack with such speed so that it finishes before they could even recognize what happened. Snap into attack and retract into defense within a single moment. He muttered as his fingers dug into the metal walls. The more she refined her technique, the closer she was to reaching S-class. At the same time, her figure seemed to slowly blur as her movements were so fast that it looked like she was barely moving. Of course, that was the limit to the camera. While there are people who could match this speed, should the opponent not be prepared, it could become a one-hit kill that wins you the match with lethal efficiency. Within a second of meeting your enemy, you have already launched an attack at their weak points. This was also the main difference between a high-level fighter and a high-level mage. Sure, a high-level mage can flatten the city in one spell, but in terms of one-to-one combat, they are limited in their options. For a fighter, this was their domain. Once a competent fighter is within punching distance of his opponent, should they be a mage, he'll be able to kill the mage multiple times before they could even react. Of course, the same applies to mages. As long as they can stop the fighter from getting closer, there should be no way that they could lose. After a moment of silence, the director looked at the screen with euphoria. S rank, she's reached it. He grinned widely. In the back, Lysandra narrowed her eyes at Shiro on the screen. She didn't know what the spiritual zone entailed, but she knew that Shiro would go even further. Once Shiro gets a moment of inspiration to acquire more strength, she'll capitalize on that inspiration and become a force of nature that adapts and improves at a monstrous rate. Do it, Mom. Show them who's the strongest around. Lysandra thought with a smile, since there was no one stronger than Shiro in her eyes. Who could boast that they managed to deny a god of what they wanted? This was her respect for Shiro, both as her adoptive parent and her master. Back in the testing chamber, Shiro heard the notification for Spiritual Zone and couldn't help but tilt her head. However, she then realized what had happened and couldn't help but frown. First was the loss of sight. Now it's the loss of hearing. The only thing I can feel right now is touch, Shiro thought with a frown. Focusing her mind, she tried to sense her surroundings, but it was no use. It was as if she was the only thing in the room right now. Little did she know, her enemies had already appeared and are now circling around her. Feeling a tingly feeling on her skin, she knew that she was still in danger, but couldn't make out what was endangering her. She tried to move around slightly, but it didn't prove to be helpful. Damn, what's up with this stage? I can't see or hear sh*t, she cursed in her mind. Just as she was about to keep moving, she felt a light prick against the surface of her skin and instantly attacked whatever it was that hit her. Bang. Unfortunately, her punch had only caused a shockwave to spread out in the area. She wasn't able to land a hit on her opponent. Calm down, Shiro. So far the test showed you what you need. The first was to test your body reaction. Second was to test mana manipulation. Therefore, I must use these two to help me pass this test. She analyzed while keeping her guard up. The moment she felt that something was off, she'd continue to punch while buying herself some time. The best way to utilize both of these with only my sense of touch would probably be a domain. However, if I use a domain, it will just increase the difficulty of this test. She furrowed her brows. She had thought of a domain because you needed to be able to react to whatever entered your area of control, or else the domain would be broken. Not only that, you also needed to constantly circulate mana into the domain efficiently in order to maintain your domain. Both of the tests seemed to be focusing around these areas, so it would only make sense for the third stage to have something to do with domains. Unfortunately, the enemy she was against didn't seem to want her to succeed, so it started to attack her more often. At times, there were even multiple senses of tingles all over her body, sometimes on her face, sometimes on her back. But she would react instantly to each tingle and push the enemy back despite not being able to feel its physical presence. As she continued this back and forth with the enemy, she didn't realize that a stronger area of control was being developed as of this moment. Outside of the chamber, everyone was watching in disbelief since they didn't think that Shiro could actually hold on in this level. Her enemy was this thin assassin-type phantom that would teleport away the moment it was about to be hit. As long as Shiro hesitated for a single moment, it would strike at her and end the test. But due to her fast reaction, she had been able to force it to teleport regardless of how many there were. At this point, the room was filled with phantoms floating around, but Shiro was still calmly fending them off. How quick is her reaction speed? When we did it, we were barely able to hold on. Hideo asked with disbelief. Inhuman, that's what. Since we never got past this level, I wonder what's beyond this. The director muttered. As they continued to watch, more and more phantoms flooded into the room as Shiro started to struggle more. There were times where she would almost get hit, but recovered just in the nick of time. Lysandra watched with determination since she knew that Shiro would find a way out of this predicament. Time continued to pass as Shiro demonstrated her ridiculous stamina and reaction speed. The longer this went on, the stronger she became. The test had long passed the 2-hour mark as she had been fighting continuously during this time. At this point, the director was no longer as excited as he was at the start since he could already tell that she far outclassed him, both in terms of technique and stamina. If they fought on even grounds, he would lose full stop. Something's changed, someone called. Looking intently at the screen, they saw a barrier of sorts flicker on and off around Shiro. While she was able to deploy it quick enough so that the system didn't change, it wasn't enough to go against the phantoms. However, the director knew that she was onto something. His thoughts were proven in the next few minutes. Relaxing her body, Shiro stood in the center with her guard completely down as the phantoms lashed out towards her. However, just as the first one was about to come into contact with her, a pulse of mana spread out and clamped down on the phantom's body, stopping him from moving. Asterisk bang. Before it could even try to teleport, a fist slammed into its motionless body. The same situation continued for the rest of the phantoms. Eventually, she was the only person left in the room. What the F asterisk CK? The director couldn't help but curse in confusion. ####. Fu. Breathing out in relief, Shiro was glad that her idea had worked. Since her reaction speed and mana manipulation was quick enough, she was able to make it so that she sent out a net of mana that would wrap around anything it touched. The instant she felt the first tingle, she deployed her net, and it managed to wrap around her enemy. Before the test could even discover her use of mana, she destroyed the enemy and retracted her mana. Congratulations, host, for creating a new domain-type skill. Would you like to name it, or should the system generate one for you? It's been a while since I last saw this. You know what? Nimue, why don't you give it a name? Me? Nimue raised her eyebrows in surprise. She didn't expect that Shiro would actually allow her to give the skill a name. Yup, you've been with me for quite a while, so I might as well let you choose a name for one of my skills. Of course, if you're uncomfortable, you don't need to do it. Nope. Who gets the privilege to name a skill like this? Often I. Nimue grinned as she tried to think of a suitable name. The skill discovers and wraps around your enemies, stopping their movements in that instant. Since that's the case, why don't we name it Kitoma? It means lockdown in spirit language. Nimue suggested. Thinking about it for a moment, Shiro nodded her head. Sure, let's call it Kitoma then, she said with a smile. Skill created, Kitoma. Kitoma. When activated, a pulse of mana will be spread out instantly and cover a 5-meter radius around you. Everything inside the area will be locked in place for 1 second. Their defenses will be reduced by 20%. Cost, 5% of total mana. Cooldown, 1 minute. Looking at the skill Kitoma, Shiro nodded in satisfaction. She never expected that a single expedition to the dojo would actually yield her such a good reward. Looking away from her system, she wondered if there was anything else to the test. Suddenly, a key appeared in front of her as it urged her to take it. Raising her eyebrows, she put the key into her inventory and wondered what it was for. Shaking her head, she left the room only to be greeted with a gaze of reverence. What the F asterisk CK? Miss Nitri, you have completed the highest grade of the test. Since you've completed the fighter route, you'll be shown to the S-ranked fighter section for the martial arts manuals. The director bowed. I thought I had to fight someone before I could get the reward. Shiro tilted her head since she wanted to give her new skill a try. Asterisk cough asterisk there is no need. The director coughed since he knew that he would lose to her the moment they fought on even grounds. Might as well spare himself some bone breaking in case she punched a little too hard. All right, Lisa, what grade did you get? Shiro called out. I got an A. I couldn't react properly in the darkness, so I struggled quite a bit. Lysandra smiled apologetically. Ah, if that's what you struggled on, I'll help you train your senses later, okay? Shiro replied. Hearing that Shiro would be training her again soon, Lysandra nodded her head in excitement. Anyways, would you like to follow me, and I'll show you to the S-rank section for martial art manuals? The director smiled. All right about that. Are there any manuals for mages? Shiro asked since she was curious as to what she could have gotten if she didn't go for the fighter route. There are indeed some manuals for mages. Why do you ask? The director tilted his head. Oh, that's because I'm a mage. Shiro smiled. Pausing in shock, he quickly checked her class and realized that this was true. Did a mage just outperform me in terms of physical prowess? Shaking the thought from his mind, the director sighed. I suppose so. Since you have reached the highest grade, I'm sure you can access the manuals for mages. Though I'm not too sure if they're useful for you since they're for the more conventional mages, I suppose. He replied. Normally, a mage would use their spells and not their physical body to complete the test, but Shiro had just proved him wrong, so that's fine. Shiro nodded since she wanted to see what the manuals for the normal mages are. After all, she is a mage in this life, so it would probably be good for her to study a little on how mages operate. But seriously, you're a mage? Who taught you how to fight like that? He asked curiously since mages don't usually get the training to perform like how Shiro did. Who trained me? Well, I suppose my other daughter's ancestor and just my friend's butler. Shiro replied since that was the truth. Yin's ancestor, Fei Ling, taught her the Phantom Path, and Lyrica's butler/master, Yuan Tian, gave her the inspiration for Azura Path. Without these two, she wouldn't have the path of ascendance martial art she had now. Of course, even without this, her body control was top-notch, but she wouldn't have passed the test through just reaction and body control alone. Seriously? Yep. Shaking his head, the director dispersed the crowd before leading the duo to the library where they keep all their manuals. To the left is the mages section, and to the right is the fighters section. We'll go to the fighters section first since that's what both of you have completed. Also, Miss Lisa, you don't have to fight anyone either since Miss Nitri has just broken the record and you're allowed some leeway. Thank you. Lysandra nodded. Normally, she would have wanted the challenge, but with Shiro promising to train her later, she was more than happy to give up this chance. Should Shiro know what Lisa was thinking, she would just laugh with sadistic intent. Since Lysandra wanted to learn how to enhance her senses without sight, the training that comes with it will naturally be harsh. Shivering slightly, Lysandra wondered what she had just felt, but decided to dismiss that feeling as cold wind. Entering the library for the fighter manuals, the director had Hideo point Lysandra towards the A-rank manuals while he brought Shiro to the S-rank manuals. In the S-rank section, we only have a few manuals since techniques of this grade are hard to come by. You're allowed to choose whichever one you want and study its contents. But remember, you cannot take the book outside or teach it easily. This is not because we're petty, but the technique is dangerous for those who don't know how to control their body to the standard of which you have demonstrated. The director warned. Don't worry, I know about the risks. Shiro chuckled. After all, she also had a set of martial arts that had quite high requirements for the body. While she did teach it to Madison and Lyrica, she made sure to add warnings and points to remember in their books so that they can practice with ease. Thinking of my martial arts, I wonder how Kene is doing. I wasn't able to find them in New York, so they might be somewhere else. Shiro thought to herself curiously. Shaking her head, she saw that they arrived at the S-ranked section for the fighter manuals. Feel free to explore however you want, and tell me when you've found one that you like. The director smiled as Shiro nodded her head. Walking through the doors, she saw a shelf with 4 manuals on them. Looking back, she saw that the director wasn't following her in. Are you not joining? Shiro asked. No need since I already know their contents. Plus, I wouldn't want to affect your choice of manuals. He shook his head. Raising her eyebrow, she only shrugged her shoulder and started to look through the manuals. 6 Everlasting Desires. Drunken Dream Realm. Breath of the Ancients. Mystic Sensory Arts. Reading through each manual, she got a gist of what they each did. First was the 6 everlasting desires. This manual had 6 stances, and each corresponded with the desires of lust, vanity, dignity, pleasant sounds, good life/death, and sensual pleasures. As one worked through the stances and reached sensual pleasures, they'll then be able to achieve a 7th stance, which allows them to tap into their latent potential. The downside of this manual, in Shiro's opinion, would be the side effects of having each of your desires enhanced to the point where you can no longer hide them. Should she even feel the slightest hint of romance towards Lyrica, for example, it would result in her trying to seduce Lyrica as much as she could. For someone like her who at times liked to act and trick her opponents, this would be counterproductive as it would take away one of her best tools. The next manual was the Drunken Dream Realm. With this martial arts, you will manipulate your mana in a way that distorts the surroundings and confuses the opponent. During this, your restraints are removed and you attack without care. This one is pretty much like a berserk mode, but you also confuse your opponents, huh? Shiro thought to herself, since this one was quite a good manual. Indeed, though you already have a few skills like that, so it's not too helpful. Nimue said as she crossed her arms, since she was also looking at the manuals. MN. Checking the next manual, The Breath of the Ancients, Shiro noticed that this was the rumored skill. This was a rather strange skill since it allows the user to gain the experiences of their ancestors for a short period of time. It says that it's mana manipulation, but Shiro knew that there was more to it than that. Since she already had plenty of experience and could technically be called an ancestor, this skill was quite useless for her as well. Last and final manual on the shelf was the Mystic Sensory Arts. This was a passive skill that enhanced your senses. While this was good, there was also the downside of not being able to turn it off. Should you be in a place that stinks, that stench would be enhanced. Not only that, the same goes with pain. However, for Shiro, this skill was almost perfect since her tolerances were quite high. Might as well go with this one. With my senses enhanced, I'll be able to detect danger even faster than before. Shiro muttered while picking up the manual. Shiro, what about that key? Don't you want to see if there's something in this room that you can use that key on? Nimue reminded before she left. True. Since I got the key from the test, I should be able to use it in this room. Pulling out the key, she looked for anything that might fit this key. Searching for a short while, she found nothing and decided to use her mana to scan the room. Pressing her palm against the wall, she sent out a pulse of mana and made a quick blueprint of the room in her mind. There's a chamber to the left. Walking over to where the chamber should be, she saw that there was just a blank wall and frowned. But before she could even say anything, her key started to glow as a seal revealed itself. Seeing the sudden presence of a light, the director walked into the room and saw the seal. When was this here? He furrowed his brows. You don't know either? It just appeared when I used the key I got from completing the test. Shiro replied as she was a little surprised that not even the director knew about this place. *KRRR. The wall started to shake as a passageway was revealed. Strangely enough, the passage seemed to be a portal of sorts since there wasn't enough space behind the wall to accommodate such a big area. Frowning slightly, Shiro decided to enter it since it shouldn't be too dangerous, right? Plus, who the hell would even reward you with a key to danger in a place like this? *Bang. Hearing the sudden collision, Shiro looked back only to see the director rubbing his nose. You okay? She asked. URG, yeah? It seems like I can't enter this passageway. He replied with a frown. In that case, then enjoy yourself. I'll be right back. Shiro shrugged since it wasn't really her problem. Wait, are you just gonna leave? The director widened his eyes. Yup. Bye. Continuing down the passageway, Shiro ignored the director behind her. Clack, clack, clack. Her footsteps rang out as the passage seemed to be endless. Having walked for quite a while, Shiro couldn't help but wonder if she should turn back. Maybe it's a trial of patience. She wondered to herself while examining her surroundings some more since she had nothing else to do. The passage was crafted from smooth stone and had metal stands that held torches. Grabbing one of the torches, she started to flip it in the air while continuing down the path. How long is this place? She muttered tiredly. Looking back, she saw that the entrance had long disappeared. Shaking her head, she looked forward once more but frowned when she realized a slight inconsistency. Previously, she had taken the torch from the wall so realistically that empty stand shouldn't be seen again. But right now, in front of her, she could see the same stand once more. TCH, so it's this kind of thing. She clicked her tongue. Pressing her finger against the wall, ice started to spread out. Making sure that the ice freezes in front of her, she closed her eyes and sensed the position of the furthest piece of ice. That way, when the path is repeated, she'll be able to sense the ice suddenly appearing behind her. As the ice continued to spread, she felt it appear behind her and knew that she had discovered the loop point. Walking over to the loop point, she created an ice dagger that was enhanced with celestial path. Scraping it against the walls, she looked for the magic circle so that she could break past this loop quickly. Bingo! She smiled when her dagger felt some resistance. Pushing mana into her dagger, she swiped at the location with her full force. Asterisk ping. Tearing the loop apart, she saw that she was only a few meters from the actual entrance. Miss Nitri, the director called out in worry. From his perspective, she had started to walk before suddenly disappearing from his sight. Since he couldn't enter the passageway, he wasn't able to check out her condition. There was probably a teleport and illusion trap set up here. Shiro muttered while examining the walls. Shaking her head, she decided to be a bit more careful. Don't worry, director, just a minor setback. Shiro shouted back as she started to walk down the path once more. This time, since she was on guard, she had been able to cancel out several spells before they could even activate. Finding herself at the top of a staircase, she walked down with caution. Thankfully, there weren't any more traps, and she proceeded down the stairs safely. After walking for a while, she saw a giant set of doors at the bottom. What a waste of stairs. They could have literally just had this door above the staircase if there were no traps, right? Shiro furrowed her brows as Nimue agreed. Pushing open the door, Shiro felt a bit irked that there were only a single pedestal and a book in the center of this huge room. Ignoring the blatant waste of space, she picked up the book and looked at its contents. The book, or rather, manual, was called the Takamikazuchi Sword Technique. Takamikazuchi, the god of thunder as well as the sword god in Japanese mythology. To think that there's a technique based on this guy. I wonder if it's authentic. She mused to herself curiously. After all, one can name a technique anything despite the contents being mediocre. Reading through the contents, she got a general gist of what the technique was about, and she had to admit that it was quite good. The main essence behind this skill was to strike fast like thunder and with the finesse of a sword god. At the first stage of training in this manual, you'll experience a growth in attack speed. If the user has lightning attunement, the manual has a section on how they should manipulate their mana in a way that benefits this technique greatly. As you continue to train in this manual, you'll be able to strike several times despite looking as if you haven't moved a single muscle. With a technique like this, it was perfect for a sneak attack. You know what? I doubt the creator of this room would think anyone would leave the manual, so I'll just take it. Shiro shrugged her shoulders and took the manual. She was going to give it a proper read-through when she had time. Making her way back to the entrance of the passageway, she saw that both Hideo and Lysandro were waiting by the side. Yo, Shiro smiled. Miss Nitri, you finally returned. If you don't mind me asking, what's at the end of the passage? The director asked curiously since he had no knowledge of this place at all. Just another manual I earned for clearing the test. I won't tell you what it is though since it's a secret, Shiro grinned. Anyways, can we go to the mage section now? I've chosen my manual for the fighter section, she said while pointing at the mystic sensory arts. Alright, sure. The director nodded since it wasn't his place to inquire about what she had got. Sure, it was in the facility, but if the creator decided to gift it to the person who completed the test, then it was hers by all rights. Showing them to the mages section, he took them to the B-ranked area since she hadn't completed the test for A-ranked. There was a huge dividing line between B-ranked and A-ranked, so unless she does the test again, he wasn't allowed to show her the A-ranked manuals. However, Shiro didn't mind too much since she wasn't a proper mage to begin with. She just wanted to see how they trained in terms of manuals. Looking through a few of the manuals, she realized that most of them were just techniques to reinforce your mana circulation and circulation patterns that enhance certain parts of your spell. Losing her interest, she set the manuals aside since she already had skills that can help with that. She was more curious about the Takamikazuchi sword technique. Saying goodbye to the director, Shiro and Lysandra left the dojo immediately after making copies of their chosen manuals. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. So what kind of manual did you choose, Lisa? Shiro asked curiously while they were making their way out of the city. What manual? Oh, I chose Sun God's Fury. It's a manual that increases my sword's lethality and speed. If I have affinity to light or fire, its effects are enhanced. Oh, interesting. Shiro nodded. What about you, Mom? Me? Well, for the S ranked, I chose Mystic Sensory Arts. Compared to the other manuals, it may not be as impressive, but having enhanced senses is very beneficial. Shiro smiled. I see. Are you not curious about the other manual I got? Shiro raised an eyebrow. I am, but if you don't talk about it, it's probably something I don't need to know. Either that, or it's best that other people don't know. Kind of like your subclass. Lysandra smiled. Hearing this, Shiro couldn't help but grin and hug Lisa from behind. Oh, why are you so much better than your sister? All she knows is to empty my wallet with food. Shiro praised. Of course, this was just a joke, since no matter how much she reprimands Ian about her food intake, she will still indulge her. Smiling wearily, Lysandra let Shiro hug her. Anyways, we'll be making our way to Mount Fuji during the day, and at night, I'll be training you in refining your senses. Shiro smiled. Once they left the city, Shio made sure that they were away from public sight before pulling out a motorbike. You had such a thing? Lysandra asked curiously since she didn't expect Shiro to be someone who has a vehicle like this. Yup, I made it when I was in New York a while ago, though I'm going to give it some minor upgrades since I've improved quite a bit. Shiro replied. Reinforcing and enhancing the components to her motorbike, she increased its speed and handling along with a few combat capabilities. Changing her clothes into jeans and a sleeveless shirt, Shiro tied her hair into a low ponytail so that it didn't smack into Lysandra's face. Hop on. Shiro smiled. Nodding her head, Lysandra sat behind Shiro as she felt a little strange to be sitting on such a vehicle. Now, make sure you grab on tight since this thing goes quite fast, okay? Okay, though I'm sure I'll be finny arggggg. Cutting off her sentence with a burst of speed, Lysandra did not expect the acceleration to be so quick. Leaving an echo of screams, of which confused the hell out of anyone who heard it, the duo left the city of Kyoto. After getting used to the speed, Lysandra stopped screaming as she clung on to Shiro as hard as she could. Why didn't you warn me it was going to go this fast? She complained while trying not to fall off. I did, didn't I? Shiro grinned. Yeah, by saying, and I quote, quite fast. This isn't quite fast, Lysandra retorted. AI, small details. Anyways, now that you got used to it, I'll increase the speed some more. Wait, it can go faster? Lysandra widened her eyes. Yup. Activating the camouflage option, she hid their presence and narrowed her eyes. Asterisk boom. Accelerating once more, Shiro leaned forward so that she won't be hit in the face by all that wind pressure. Naturally, there was something else she had to worry about, but her passive healing was doing a good job at stopping Lysandra from breaking her back. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. Setting up camp for the night. Shiro looked over at Lysandra, who seemed worn out from the trip. Mom, can we not just walk? She asked tiredly. Nope. That would take too much time after all. That being said, we should be able to reach Mount Fuji tomorrow morning once we wake up. Shiro chuckled. URG. Anyways, enough about that. Since it's night, what better time to get you some training? Shiro grinned. With Lysandra's current state, the training will be much, much harder. Flinching slightly at the mention of training, Lysandra forced her body up and took a deep breath. Okay, so what do I do? Lysandra asked. First, take this blindfold. I made it in a way so that it should stop any light from reaching your eyes, removing your sight temporarily. Shiro replied while handing her a pitch-black blindfold. I would give you something to remove your hearing, but this will do for now. We'll get you up to par without your sight first. Shiro smiled. Guiding her to the nearby forest, she had Lysandra stand in the middle. For the first training, I'll be attacking you from different locations rapidly with blunted ice weapons. Your job is to either deflect or dodge them. Got it. Understood. Lysandra nodded. This was just the same as the test, so it wasn't an unfamiliar concept to her. What she didn't know was that having a person conduct this test was much harder than a robot. One reason would be the fact that Shiro would control and release her killing intent at will. With her intent distracting Lysandra, she could set up several feints as well as traps for her in order to throw her off her rhythm. Grinning slightly, she held blunted ice daggers between her fingers and jumped from the branch. Flipping her body in the air, she threw the daggers quickly before jumping into the rift. Exiting behind Lysandra, Shiro made more daggers and threw them towards her back. Suddenly feeling danger from two sides, Lysandra knew that Shiro wasn't going to take it easy on her. Getting into a stance, she pivoted on her foot and roundhouse kicked all the daggers that were attacking her from above while punching the daggers behind her. Seems like this level is quite simple for her. I'll make things a bit harder then, Shiro mused to herself. Flexing her fingers, hundreds of nanotech wires spread out through the area, making it seem like a spider's nest. Layering the wires with ice, she made it so that she could attack Lysandra from every direction all at once. Flicking the wire, hundreds of ice daggers were created and fired simultaneously. Oh crap, Lysandra muttered since she felt danger surround her in an instant. ####. After a few rounds of this difficulty, Lysandra had quite a few wounds on her body despite the weapons being blunted. This isn't very good now, is it? Shiro furrowed her brows. Just as she thought of this, a great idea popped into her mind. If I layered the daggers with live fire, it would heal her up. Her stamina will also be restored a little, so this is perfect. Hearing this idea, Nimue widened her eyes and instantly felt pity for Lysandra and whoever Shiro will train in the future. Snapping her fingers, her daggers lit up with a green flame and shot towards Lysandra. As her training continued, all of Lysandra's wounds were being healed so that she could continue at peak form. Seeing that Lysandra was doing pretty well at this stage, despite a few blunders here and there, Shiro decided to let her get used to this before progressing. Setting aside a portion of her attention to help Lysandra train, Shiro pulled out the mystic sensory arts so that she could do some training herself. The core aspect of this manual was to have her manipulate her mana in a certain way constantly until it becomes second nature for her. That was just stage 1. As she continues to control her mana this way, her senses will continue to get better and become permanent. At this point, everything will be pushed past the limit. Of course, she could just stop it at stage 1 and make it so that she could turn it off at will, but the enhancement to her senses were negligible, so it wasn't worth it. Following the instructions on the manual, she furrowed her brows since she felt a little uncomfortable with manipulating her mana through her body like this. Not only that, since around 60% of her links were still damaged, trying to change the mana path like this was going to be much harder than normal. Shaking her head, she decided to just train it to stage 1 for now. On the other hand, the Takamikazuchi sword technique should be achievable for her right now. Another mana path changer. Why do so many techniques that I found require me to change the path of my mana? Can't I just change the spell composition or something? Shiro thought with a frown. Perhaps it's because all the techniques you choose are physical-based. Think of it this way. You're a vampire, but you're trying to learn how to change into a werewolf. But before you can think about fully becoming a werewolf, you then think about changing into a demon. Each martial art is supposed to either be trained on its own or synergize with a similar art. With so many conflicting ones in your arsenal, it's no wonder you'll have to change your pathways. Nimue shrugged. If that's the case, I'll probably have to try to merge a few of these together if I can then. I wonder if I can make the Takamikazuchi sword technique into a path? That way, it gains some passive bonuses from my titles. Shiro mused to herself. So far, she had 4 paths. Phantom Path, Azura Sword Path, Celestial Path, and Berserker Path. With her title's effect, every time she used one of the paths, she gained a 10% increase to her stats temporarily. With more paths, the bigger this increase will be. However, thinking up of this point, she couldn't help but glance at her Berserker Path once more. At first I thought I was a Berserker, but it seems like I'm wrong. Berserkers are mindless killing machines that don't think at all. I'm not a brainless musclehead, mostly anyway. It seems like I'll need to reevaluate myself to see what kind of person I am. Berserker just doesn't feel right. What do you think, Nimue? What kind of person do you think I am? Shiro asked curiously. What I think? I want to say conqueror, but that's not right either. You don't conquer places and take over the land. Tyrant's not correct either. I would probably call you a dominator then. Dominator? Perhaps, though it still feels off. So many things to do. Mount Fuji, 2 martial art manuals, refinement of old ones, and training Lisa. Shiro shrugged her shoulders. True, though I suppose you do have 2 months to burn. Speaking of burning, you should probably increase Lysandra's training intensity since it looks like she's gotten used to it again. Good point. Shiro nodded after looking back at Lysandra. With her fire constantly healing her, she was able to concentrate past her limits for an extended period of time. This allowed her to improve rapidly as she was able to deflect most of the daggers. Tapping her chin, Shiro smiled when she thought up of a way to make things harder for Lysandra. Snapping her fingers, ice daggers started to be fired at a faster pace while her killing intent assaulted Lysandra's senses. Being caught off guard by all of this, Lysandra was bombarded for a good while as she suppressed her shouts and tried to look for a better way out of this. Don't just think about using your body. You must use your mana as well to enhance your attack speed. Create a burst behind your elbow to accelerate your arm and a second burst point at your fist after punching out. That way, you can attack and retract in an instant. If you don't do this quick enough, I'll increase the difficulty for a short while. Shiro called out with a smile. Nodding her head, Lysandra tried her best. But reality wasn't so kind as she was reduced into a sandbag throughout the night. The next morning, Shiro decided to go a little slower on her bike since Lysandra's fatigued body was currently sleeping on her back. Wondering if she should make her motorbike into a car instead, she traveled towards the base of Mount Fuji in a relatively slow pace that allowed Lysandra to sleep soundlessly. Disguising the bike's appearance so that it looked normal, Shiro arrived at a nearby town that was situated next to a lake. Looking at the great mountain not too far away in the distance, Shiro couldn't help but whistle at how impressive the mountain looked. Of course, that was only because since the top is covered with snow, it meant that she could theoretically thrive at the top. I wonder how big my spells would be if I used the snow to my advantage. Shiro muttered with a smile. Asterisk yawn. You up? Did you rest well? Shiro asked as she felt Lysandra wake up behind her. In, good enough, I guess. Where are we now? Lysandra asked as she looked around in a daze. Oh, just a village/town near the base of Mount Fuji. Unless it's something important, I'll only be investigating the celestial trial a little before making my way to Tokyo. The trial won't be open for another 3 months after all. Shiro smiled. I see. In that case, then can I go get something to eat? I'm a bit famished after last night. Lysandra rubbed her eyes a little as Shiro suppressed her urge to just hug her. Damn, why is Lisa so adorable lately? Maybe because your attention is on her instead of Ian, who just eats. Nimue chuckled. That might be the truth in all honesty. Shaking her head, she sped up her bike a little and made her way to the closest restaurant she had on the map. During this, she decided to have a look at their levels. Most of them average out around level 80 give or take with quite a few at level 100 or above too. Shiro muttered. It doesn't really matter to you, does it, Mom? Though, I do wonder if I can kill a level 100 plus by myself. I do have a few berserk skills and buffs to enhance myself. Lysandra wondered. Don't try it without me being close since the only reason I could is because of my current skill set and some luck. At their level, just a single attack could spell doom for you. Shiro warned since fighting B class was no laughing matter. If not for the fact that she had several powerful skills to help her out, she would not challenge them, not even with her Snowmancer class. She was many things, but suicidal was not one of them. Just curious though. If the whole party could kill B rank people when they're level 100, we should be able to kill a B rank boss, right? Lysandra replied. Depends on what kind of boss we're talking about. If it's a raid type boss, F***ck no. If it's a dungeon type boss, F***ck yes we can. Shiro chuckled. I see. Oh, by the way, how would you rate my performance, Mom? With the inclusion of your killing intent, it was quite hard to concentrate and pick out the real danger, but I think I can get the hang of it soon. Lysandra asked as she had an excited shine in her eyes. Smiling wearily, Shiro wondered why Lysandra was such a battle maniac. This kind of gaze would not be present should she be talking about something else, and yet, here it is the moment she speaks about training. She kind of takes after you in that regard since you do nothing but research and fighting. Oh, shut it. Surely, I do OT. Okay, never mind, maybe you're right. Shiro paused since she realized that that was indeed all she had done. If she wasn't fighting, she was researching. If she wasn't researching, she would be fighting. There were very few moments where she would actually relax like she was now. Returning her focus back to Lysandra, she evaluated her performance mentally. You're doing great so far. If I had to give you an area to improve on, I would say work on your decision-making. You hesitate a little too much before you launch an attack. Whether that's because you're working out on where to place the mana bubbles or the fact that you're trying to figure out if an attack is a feint or not, you want to be reducing your hesitation time as much as possible. Shiro replied after a moment. RAOES. For her, she's able to get a 3D model of all the attacks around her and figure out the best attacking path. But that's not something everyone could do, so her best advice was to just try to reduce the time it takes for her to think about her attack. Of course, that's not to say that she should just throw out attacks blindly. I'll try. Lysandra nodded since she had seen Shiro's performance and knew of the gap that existed between the two of them. Since it's reaction time and decision-making that she needed to practice on, she was going to make sure that they're up to par either soon or in the near future. After having some food, Shiro and Lysandra made their way towards Mount Fuji. Unfortunately, just as they left the village, they saw guards and a barrier in the distance, stopping people from going closer to Mount Fuji. Furrowing her brows, she decided to get closer and see what was going on. Putting away her bike, she walked up to one of the guards. "Excuse me, sorry for bothering you, but why are there so many guards around? And it seems like we're not allowed to go to Mount Fuji." Shiro asked with a slightly difficult face. "I guess you're new around and didn't see the notification. You see, there was an abnormal rise in monster activity in the mountains. With most of the monsters being B-class, it is very dangerous for anyone to approach the mountain. You can probably find some more information out in the guild." The guard replied with a smile. That's a problem. I know you said to find information out at the guild, but do you have an idea of what kind of monsters are here?" "No idea. The monsters change often, and it's gone through quite a few species. From snow woman to boreal golems, and so on." The guard shrugged. Nodding her head, Shiro took out her motorbike and drove back with Lysandra hugging behind her once more. "Snow woman, huh? I wonder what a meeting between me and them would be like. I still have my fratricide title, so I'll get hostility from the snow girls and acknowledgement from the snow woman. Hopefully, there won't be any snow girls around." Shiro chuckled. "MN, what do you think happened, Mom? For so many monsters to gather, it's clearly abnormal." Lysandra asked. "There are many probabilities ranging from the spawning of a treasure that can be used passively by monsters to the sudden increase of mana. It could also be that a strong monster has laid claim to the area and brought guards along with it. Regardless, it's best we sort this out while we have a lot of time." Shiro replied. That way, she could avoid any unnecessary hassle at the time the celestial trials open. It would be awkward to have to wait a few more months for it to open should they miss it after all. True. ####. Arriving at the guild hall, Shiro didn't even have to look for the notice since there were plenty of people standing in front of the giant holographic message. Emergence Quest. Investigate the sudden rise in monster activity in Mount Fuji. Due to the recent outbreak of monsters on the mountain, you are tasked to investigate its cause. So far, the monsters have been revealed to be B-class monsters such as the Snow Woman. Only B-classed adventurers or higher are eligible to take this task. As for those in the C-class, you may join if you're partnered with a B-class or prove that you can stand against a B-class. As this is a scouting mission, no combat is needed and prioritize your life. Rewards will differ depending on how reliable your information is. However, the base reward is 20 large silvers for each participating member. Those who are able to stop the cause and resolve it will be granted an orange-grade equipment. You may register for this quest at the reception and undergo a test. Once you are proven to be capable, you'll be given a special ID card that will allow you to pass the barrier into Mount Fuji. Should you try to sneak in, a fine will be issued. Guild Master Sugita Hitomi. Reading the emergency quest, Shiro realized that this was also perfect for Lysandra since that means she could experience what it was like to fight B-ranked monsters more often. Say, what do you think of continuing your training, but with B-ranked monsters? Shiro asked with a smile. Sure. I feel like we should do this regardless since it might complicate your completion of the Celestial Trials, Mom. Lysandra nodded her head. Walking over to the queue by the receptionist, Shiro waited patiently until it was her turn. How can I help you? The receptionist asked with a smile. I would like to register for a guild ID as well as see if I'm able to participate in the emergency quest. Shiro requested since she was currently disguised as Nitri. Plus, if she was to get another ID, it would be handy for her. You don't have an ID? The receptionist raised her eyebrows in suspicion since one would get an ID quite early on. Yeah, you see, my family was quite reclusive, so we don't go out much. I was only allowed to go out once I hit level 100, so I'm here to get an ID. Shiro replied, making up an excuse. Alright. Follow me to the registration room, and I'll see if you've been registered before. Nodding her head, Shiro followed behind her. She wasn't afraid since she could just tamper with the system if needs be. Just put your hands on the orb, and I'll see if there are any records. The receptionist said as she looked at her laptop. Following her instructions, Shiro made sure to have some of her nanobots invade the laptop and fiddle with the database. That's strange, no records. The woman frowned. Can you put your hand on the orb as well, please? She said, turning to Lysandra. Nodding her head, Lysandra also put her hand on the orb only for the same results to appear. This is abnormal. Give me a second, I'll go talk to the guild master. The receptionist excused herself and left the room. After waiting a while, Shiro saw that she had returned with another woman. She wore a business suit, tied up black hair that was in a ponytail along with a pair of black-framed glasses. Her expression was stern and serious as it would normally intimidate adventurers that see her, but it didn't faze Shiro nor Lysandra. I'm Sugita Hitomi, branch master of this guild. Since you two have no records, I'll have to make some for you now, and I may need to ask you some personal questions. Is that okay? Hitomi asked while adjusting her glasses slightly. That would be fine, though due to the nature of our family, I may have to withhold some information. Shiro replied with a smile. That's fine. I've dealt with my fair share of reclusive families. Hitomi nodded and led them to another room. Sitting down behind her desk, she gestured for the duo to sit down as well. Asking them a few questions, Hitomi tapped away on her laptop. All right, I've made a file on each of you. Your IDs will be printed soon, and while we're at it, I might as well help you conduct the test to see if you can join in the quest. Hitomi said while glancing at the printer by the side. What kind of test is it? Shiro asked curiously. Oh, it's simple. Think of it as an intense game of tag against AB-ranked adventurers through an obstacle course. To win, you must outmaneuver the adventurers or defeat them in combat. Since there's a high chance of having multiple monsters chasing after you, you'll have to face a few B-ranked adventurers. Is that okay? Hitomi explained. Yeah, that's fine. Since we're going to be partied together, are we able to take the test together? Shiro asked. Sure, but that will mean double the amount of B-classed adventurers. Hitomi replied. That's fine. Okay, follow me. We'll get your tests set up now after the current members finish theirs. Following behind Hitomi, Shiro saw that they were brought to an underground area. Currently, they were in a hallway with glass on the side. Looking through the glass, Shiro could see the entire course with several adventurers chasing after each other. The overall area was huge, and Shiro suspected that they could fit a mini town in this space. With a variety of obstacles ranging from huge boulders to cliffs and trees, it was as if there was a miniature world underneath the guild itself. Surprisingly, despite their spells flying around, none of the scenery seemed to be damaged. Hologram, I suppose? Shiro asked with a smile. Correct. We have platforms randomly generated and a scenery hologram placed over the top of it. That way, it's easier to simulate the real-life situations. Hitomi replied. Scanning her ID card, she brought them down to the base of the course and waited by the side. Guild master, what brings you here? One of the staff jogged over and bowed in respect. I'm bringing 2 people to take the test. I just sorted out their ID, so I thought that it would be more efficient to get their test done while they're here. Of course. The current test is almost over, so they can be next. The staff nodded and showed them to the side where they were given a set of armor. This here is a specially crafted armor that would send you out of the arena once you take a certain amount of damage. Once that happens, you would have failed the test. There is a barrier fitted onto the armor, so you don't have to worry about feeling the damage directly. Looking at the armor that seemed to be a little clunky, Shiro wondered if she should use her analysis skill to check its core components and see how it's made. After all, if she could figure out how they teleported the people out, She may be able to make some teleport amulets for her party members. Putting on the armor, both Shiro and Lysandra waited patiently by the side while the guild master watched from a separate room. Normally, she wouldn't trouble herself with something like this, but due to the nature behind Shiro's identity, she had to make sure that they overlooked everything personally. Soon, it was their turn as the two of them were teleported into the arena. The adventurers that are supposed to chase them were a little surprised at the fact that it was two level 100s. These two want to try to get the quest. One of them frowned in concern. Seems so. Must be the orange-grade equipment that got them excited. Another sighed. Since that's the case, we should finish this quickly. There are chances for equipment later, but no second chances in life. Agreed. Coming to a general understanding, the chasers stretched their bodies as they made sure that they catch these two. However, they had no idea that Shiro had something else planned. While she didn't want to show too much of her strength, this was a perfect opportunity to test out the Takamikazuchi's sword technique. Lisa, hold back a little, but do try to send them out of the arena, Shiro said with a smile. That's my plan. Though in fairness, it should be me that tells you that since you're holding back is still quite lethal, you know? Lysandra chuckled since Shiro hadn't gone 100% yet. She knew that Shiro had quite a few berserk skills, items and weapons that she could use, but chooses not since there hasn't been a situation where she needed to. Even during the war in Muriel, she hadn't shown her true power with the Snowmancer class, or else the city would be littered with craters and destroyed buildings. Hell, she hadn't even seen Shiro use her mech armors again, yet since she remembered seeing the Zephyr armor back in the trial, where she had first met Shiro. Only when she used her armor could Lysandra be more than 50% sure that Shiro's gone full power. Well, you should always have hidden trump cards. They're only good if no one knows about them, regardless of how powerful they are. After all, if saved till the last moment, it may even save your life one day. Shiro chuckled. Making herself 2 ice daggers, she gave Lysandra a thumbs up before jumping into the rift. So assassination it is. Lysandra muttered since this meant that Shiro was giving her a chance to stand her ground and see how she does against B-ranked adventurers. Bringing out her longsword, she took a deep breath before flickering away from her location. Looking at the scene, Hitomi furrowed her brows. Why aren't they running? Could it be that she's planning to take on all the B-classed adventurers? She does realize that there are 20 of them, right? She thought to herself with a frown. Flicking one of the switches on the table next to her, she got a tracker of where everyone is in the arena. Realizing that Shiro's tracker would disappear before reappearing on a regular basis, Hitomi realized she must be using a strong concealment type skill. However, that didn't make any sense to her since Shiro was registered as a mage. Did Nitri lie about her class? She muttered in suspicion, but decided to hold off on her theories for now. She'll see how the two of them performed for now and question them later. ######. Flickering in and out of her rift, Shiro noted down the locations of each chaser and realized that there were about 20 of them. It's not too bad. If I play my cards properly, I'll be able to take care of a few of them before they even realize it. Shiro mused to herself while twirling her dagger. Hiding behind a boulder, she closed her eyes and planned out who she was going to attack first. Since they're mostly traveling as a group for now, she'll have to wait until they split up. Lisa should also know this, so she'll be waiting for a while. I'll go be bait first and try to draw a few of them away from the place. Shiro thought to herself and dashed to the highest point of the arena. Upon arrival, Shiro immediately went to work. Flicking her dagger into the sky, she snapped her finger and exploded it into 5 shards that flew out in different directions. This didn't escape the chasers' attention as they immediately had 5 of them go towards her locations. Be careful, it might be a trap. Regardless of how high our levels are, we'll get sent out upon taking too much damage too, so keep your guard up. They're still level 100s after all. One of them warned as the 5 nodded their heads. Dashing to the highest peak, they saw Shiro standing there with a challenging grin. I wouldn't normally do this, but for you 5, I'll try out a new tactic. Shiro chuckled and stomped her foot down. Just as she did this, a giant magic circle instantly appeared with the 5 shards that she had sent out earlier acting as anchors. *KRRRR. A tearing sound could be heard as the skies tore open to reveal a vibrant galaxy full of stars. Activating frozen slumber once her preparations were complete, Shiro's eyes had hints of excitement since she wanted to see what cosmic ice could do when paired up with her best restriction skill. Shimmering with a soft light, the stars in the galaxy flickered for a moment before chains started to pour out from the tear. Asterisk cling 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 cling. Smashing against the ground, a pulse of energy spread outwards as the chasers realized that with each pulse, a layer of ice would be instantly formed around them. Not only that, but they wouldn't be able to use their mana for a short period as the pulse hit them, meaning they had to use their physical strength to break out. However, Shiro wasn't about to allow that. Using the chains as a trampoline, she propelled herself towards the closest chaser and readied her dagger. Takamikazuchi sword technique, first stage. She muttered in her mind. Lightning flickered from her dagger as she twisted her body. Asterisk bang. Feeling a sudden burst of speed, Shiro's body flickered out of view before reappearing not too far behind them. During this moment, two lethal slash marks could be seen tearing through the barrier as the chaser was sent out in an instant. TCH, I need to get used to this speed. I was only able to strike twice within that moment, Shiro thought with a frown. Not only that, she could feel a little numbness spreading through her body as a result of that. Whether or not it was because of her inexperience or not, only time would tell, but so far, she liked the technique quite a bit. RAO. Jumping into the rift, she repositioned herself with a second attack. Meanwhile, Lysandra looked towards the peak of the mountain and realized that Shiro must be trying to draw their attention. Smiling softly, she thanked Shiro in her mind before spreading out her mana. Unlike Shiro, she can't jump into the rift to disengage should she run into an annoying situation, so she needed to be more careful. Suppressing her own mana to the point where it's barely detectable, she discovered 15 signals moving closer to her. 15 of them. I can probably take the two at the back before being discovered. Once that happens, I'll need to make sure I can get away quick enough. She thought to herself. Adjusting her grip on her sword, she created a small ball of light in her hands and threw it into the air once the group was close enough. Detonating the ball, the area was suddenly filled with an intense light as she made her move. Enhancing her body with her elemental armor, she flashed towards the two at the back of the group and swung her blade. Unfortunately, they were able to react in time by raising their arms in defense. I need to correct my sword's flight path, Lysandra thought to herself and created two pockets of mana that detonated one after another to readjust her attack, while also giving it a speed boost. Asterisk, KSH. Slashing twice, she managed to inflict enough damage to their barriers and force them out of the arena as the others charged towards her. Sweeping her blade around in a circle, she released a barrier of light that obstructed their view of her. Sending out several light blades that were unfortunately blocked, Lysandra used this moment to change her location and camouflage herself. Through the use of her light attunement, she wrapped light around her so that to outsiders, no one was there. When paired with her mana concealment, it was as if she suddenly disappeared. ###. Staying silent, Hitomi watched as Shiro took out the 5 chasers easily, while Lysandra was able to take out 2 without being attacked by the others that were near her. Seems like they're more capable than I thought. By attacking quickly, they're able to surprise the chasers and give them enough time to escape without fighting a prolonged exchange. They know what kind of leeway they're allowed and make use of that. While that Lisa isn't able to take on several chasers simultaneously like Nitri is, the number of enemies she faced was greater. She muttered after a short pause. As the chasers were trying to look for Lysandra, Hitomi realized that she didn't have an escape skill like Shiro. This isn't good. Unlike humans, the monster's senses are stronger, so even if she enters stealth and removes her mana signature, her smell is still there. Sending out a message to the leader of the current group of chasers, she allowed them to use their tracking skills to find Lysandra. Find her and take her. Only then will you focus on Nitri, since she's the main problem, Hitomi ordered before cutting the communications. While this does seem unfair, it was needed since it's better than sending people to a dangerous mission. Only when they overcome unfair odds will she be slightly okay with sending them out. ###. Receiving a green light for them to use their tracking skills, they instantly found Lysandra's location and attacked her. Widening her eyes, Lysandra flipped her body backwards and narrowly avoided the attack. However, The chasers didn't give her too much leeway since the second wave was now charging at her. Looking at the attacks that were trying to send her out of the arena, she couldn't help but realize that this was exactly like the training she had done with Shiro. While she didn't expect to deflect each and every attack, she wanted to open up a narrow gap so that she could slip past and last a little longer. Tensing her hands around the grip of her sword, she created several pockets of mana. Asterisk bang 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 bang. Deflecting 4 attacks in an instant, she dived through that gap before slashing another chaser just as she was getting back on her feet. But before she could stabilize herself, the chaser managed to throw out a punch at her and send her crashing into a wall. Thankfully, she was able to raise her sword in time to block that strike and narrowly stop herself from being sent out of the arena. But with this, she somewhat got a hang of utilizing the mana pockets in moments of danger. Grinning with excitement, Lysandra readied herself once more and slashed towards the chasers, attacking and defending quickly with the use of her mana pockets. Lysandra was able to take out 5 of them before coming close to being eliminated. However, before that could happen, an ice dagger appeared in their vision and collided against the sword, knocking it away from Lysandra. "Mom," Lysandra called out in surprise. "Yo, seems like you were able to use the techniques quite well. Good job," Shiro praised while making a few more daggers and threw it towards the remaining 8 chasers. Blocking the daggers, the chasers had a serious expression on their faces since the situation wasn't optimal. While they had to hold back a little since the 2 were only level 100, the fact that they managed to take out more than half of them was quite concerning. Giving each other a quick glance, they nodded their head as they agreed to all go serious. Unfortunately for them, Shiro wasn't merciful enough to allow them this chance. Snapping her fingers, the daggers exploded into a cloud of close mist. The particles then expanded into ice spikes and pierced towards the chasers. 2 of them were taken off guard and were sent out of the arena while the other 6 jumped away. "You take 3 and I take 3? Shiro asked with a smile. "Sure." Readying both their weapons, Shiro grabbed Lysandra and jumped into the rift. Exiting not too far away from the chasers, she twisted her body and used her leg as a jump pad for Lysandra. Kicking out with all her strength, Lysandra shot towards the chasers while she flipped her body and made herself a small ice platform. Activating the Takamikazuchi technique once more, her body flickered out of sight. Asterisk bang bang bang. In an instant, 5 of the chasers were eliminated while the last one managed to dodge in time and land a kick against Lysandra's cheek. If anything, he hoped to take out at least one of them before they go, or else it would be quite a disappointment. Unfortunately for him, Shiro had already taken this into consideration and activated her illusion skill. What would have hit Lysandra on the chest had actually missed her narrowly as she landed the final slash against his body. With all of the chasers eliminated, the duo managed to pass with flying colors. ####. Looking at the chasers that were eliminated with a frown, Hitomi sighed. "Seems like there's more to them than I thought. No conventional mage would have her kind of strength and body control. Should I get a few people to try to find out their real background, I wonder?" Hitomi thought to herself. It would circumflex Epsilon. After all, it would not be good if the duo were dangerous figures. Should they cause trouble, it'll be her responsibility. After a short moment, she sighed and sent a voice message to the investigation team. Make finding out the true identity of these 2 an A-ranked priority. If you can, get a few people to follow them without being discovered. Once the message was sent, she walked out of her office and made her way towards Shiro and Lysandra, who had returned the armor. "Now that you prove that you can clearly handle strong enemies, I'll give you a quick rundown on the areas you should investigate and some information about the situation," Hitomi said as she gestured for the 2 of them to follow her back to her office. "To give you a basic rundown of the situation, we've got several theories on what had happened. The most likely is that a dungeon was generated without our knowledge and has been opened, releasing hundreds of monsters to roam around the mountain. The only reason we think this is because of a general trend of monsters appearing. They're all of the ice type and many are not seen around this area, and yet they've appeared now. The reason why we haven't disclosed this information is because it's not confirmed. Your job is to investigate the area and see if you can find the dungeon entrance or something that's similar," Hitomi explained as Shiro raised an eyebrow. "Oh, a dungeon was generated now?" Shiro asked. After all, The only time a dungeon would be generated was at the very start or when it's handmade, such as the trial area that Lyrica's mother had made back in Muriel. Indeed, our observers have detected a huge spike of mana around a month ago and determined that the fluctuations bear resemblances to a dungeon. Unfortunately, there seemed to be an interference barrier or something similar since we weren't able to pinpoint the exact location. All we know is that there's a spike in mana, more monsters are appearing, and they're gathered on Mount Fuji. Should you bring me information on where the source is as well as proof that it's true, you'll be rewarded with an orange-grade equipment. And if multiple people find the information and hand it in at the same time? Shiro asked with a smile. Well, in that case, then you'll just have to fight for it then. Hitomi replied simply, handing her an ID badge as well as the map they uncovered so far of the monster activity. She sent the two of them on their way. Well, isn't she a little rude? Lysandra furrowed her brows. Not so much rude, but maybe serious? Regardless, let's go meet some snow woman. Shiro chuckled. Leaving the guild, she brought out her motorbike and made her way to the base of Mount Fuji. This time, they were allowed entry after showing the guards their new ID badge. Just as they entered the mountain, they were shocked by the sudden change in environment. From the outside, the mountain seemed normal with a snowy peak. However, once they get past the barrier, it's actually a raging snowstorm that blocked a lot of their vision. Surprised, one of the guards smiled after seeing their reaction. A little. To think this barrier here is also a concealment barrier. Shiro replied. Yep. It wouldn't be good if the civilians saw that the mountain was suddenly covered by a blizzard. It would cause quite a bit of panic. The guard chuckled. Talking for a little longer, Shiro and Lysandra ventured deeper into the blizzard. Traveling for a while, Shiro made sure to continuously release her mana in order to sense her surroundings, but found no one else except for a few stray adventurers. Seems like the monsters are hiding. Shiro furrowed her brows as she had a fun idea. Say, Lisa, why don't I reveal my identity as a monster and roam around for a bit? If the monsters here are intelligent, they might converge towards us. She suggested with a smile. But can't you make a drone and have it fly through the area? Lysandra tilted her head. I can. But that's no fun now, is it? Just sitting back and letting a robot do all the work. Shiro shook her head since she liked to do things herself if possible. Well, either way, I'll follow you, Mom. Lysandra smiled. All right, give me a second. Changing her outfit so that it fit the aesthetic of a snow woman more, she made some small adjustments to her face and disguised her status. Shiva LVL 100 Snow Woman. HP 50 000 000 /50 000 000. MP 100 000 000 /100 000 000. Of course, her HP and MP were fake since she didn't have that much. It was just so that her disguise was more convincing. Taking a deep breath, her aura instantly changed to that of a sharp sword. Her face was cold and emotionless while her killing intent expanded out without restraint. Not only that, due to the nature of her ice element, a portion of the area had actually frozen over with her comic ice. Lisa, you should disguise yourself as a monster as well. That way, it would be easier for the two of us to stay together should we meet any intelligent monsters. Shiro called out. Nodding her head, Lysandra revealed her angel wings and changed her outfit with the help of Shiro. Lycoris LVL 100 Angelic Maiden. HP 100 000 000 /100 000 000. MP 100 000 000 /100 000 000. Changing her name along with her class, Shiro nodded in satisfaction. Don't bother hiding your aura and killing intent so that we seem more like monsters. Shiro smiled. Making their way around the place at a casual pace, Shiro had already detected a few humans trailing behind them, but didn't make a single move. Unfortunately, humans weren't what she was looking for. Should any of them try to kill her, she'll try to spare them and disengage. But if that wasn't possible, then she would have no choice but to kill them. But that was a last resort, of course. It's either that or she causes a big enough commotion to draw the monster's attention. Decisions. Which shall I choose? To spare or not to spare? Shiro thought, while narrowing her eyes at the distant adventurers. Walking for a little longer, she finally felt some movements from the humans and realized that they're going to try to hunt her and Lisa. Give them a bit of mercy if you can. Shiro smiled as Lysandra nodded. Continuing to walk, they suddenly felt a huge spike of mana as a Tier 4 magic circle could be seen in the air. Fire coagulated into a spear as meteors orbited around it. Seeing this, Shiro only smiled and flicked her arm. A semi-translucent ice shield appeared around her and Lysandra. Bang. Colliding against the spear, the shield stood strong and barely faltered against the spear. Oh, to think at 38% recovery, a Tier 4 spell is no match for my shield. Shiro thought with a raised eyebrow. Shifting her hand into a fist, she expanded the shield and shattered the spear in an instant. Looking into the distance, she could see the disbelief in the adventurers' faces. There seems to be 5 people in their party. Let's give them a small welcome, Shiro said with a smile. Amen. Lysandra nodded. Spreading out her wings, she readied her sword and flew towards the party while Shiro wasn't too far behind. She was currently using her flight skill to keep up with Lysandra. Quickly, defense formation, the party leader shouted out as he readied his shield. 1 shield user, a sword user, 2 mages, and 1 healer. Not too bad of a party, I suppose. Shiro thought to herself as they're all higher than level 100. Soseki LVL 110 Grand Shield Emperor. Kenji LVL 112 Astral Sword Sage. Chio LVL 110 Solari Grand Caster. Kaya LVL 115 Elemental Witch. Satoshi LVL 110 Arch Healer. ####. Looking at the 2 level 100 monsters flying towards them right now, Soseki knew that they were in a bit of trouble. They had wanted to use a surprise attack in order to get some early damage on this named monster, but they didn't expect her shield to be so strong. Even with the combined might of a Solari Grand Caster and an elemental which couldn't phase her defenses. New beta. Casting Taunt on the Angelic Maiden, he frowned when the skill failed. Activating a few more aggro-attracting skills, his expression became deadly serious since they all failed. This isn't good. She might be immune to aggro skills. Soseki shouted out in panic as the rest of the party widened their eyes. I'll put some buffs on you now. Try to intercept her if you can and keep an eye out on Shiva. Satoshi warned since the Snow Woman was the most dangerous in his eyes. At least for Lycoris, the Angelic Maiden, they could block her attacks with the shield. A mage's attack is harder to block should it be an AoE. I know. Try to focus Lycoris down first, then we'll move on to Shiva. Soseki nodded. Feeling power flow into his body, he jumped up into the air and slammed his shield into Lysandra, who managed to block it with her sword. However, his strength was much greater than what she had thought, so she had to twist her body and redirect him aside so that she wouldn't take all the force. Bang. Flipping his body so that he landed upright, Soseki slammed the base of his shield on the ground as several golden chains shot up in an attempt to bind her. Seeing this, Shiro flexed her fingers and controlled the snow around them to restrain the chains. TCH. Clicking his tongue, Soseki looked towards the relaxed Shiro who seemed to be controlling all the snow around them. Damn, I may have miscalculated, he thought in seriousness. While this was happening, Chio and Kaya prepared a second spell and launched it towards Lysandra. Hopefully, this would stop her from flying, making the fight easier. The spell was one that would amplify gravity and make it so that spells are harder to use for the target monster. Raising her eyebrow, Lysandra quickly stabilized herself as she avoided being slammed into the ground. Raising up her sword, she blocked a strike from Kenji. Unfortunately, the strike had forced her back by quite a bit despite being blocked by her sword. Are you okay? Shiro asked softly as Lysandra nodded her head. Hearing this, the party was surprised to see that the two could actually speak a human language. You 5, seems like you want to meet death quite eagerly, huh? Shall I give you that privilege? Shiro asked as her lips curved into a cruel smile. Feeling the full brunt of her killing intent, the party froze up for a moment as Satoshi activated a buff skill that increases one's willpower. That way, they could at least move despite her killing intent. Kenji, Chio, Kaya, target Shiva. I'll handle Lycoris for now. Soseki shouted out as the party nodded. You know, telling me your strategy is quite foolish, isn't it? Shiro tilted her head while raising her hand. Asterisk, boom. Her mana flared instantly as a wave of cold mist charged towards them, activating fire barriers around the three of them. Chio was surprised at how quite her MP was being drained in order to stop the cold mist from killing them. Understanding that Chio couldn't keep this up, Kenji charged towards Shiro and brandished his sword. Astral step, he said seriously as his body disappeared in a flicker of starlight. Asterisk, ping. Widening his eyes, he was shocked to see that an ice spear had intercepted his sword from slashing the back of Shiro's neck. Targeting the neck is very rude, you know? You should learn how to treat a woman better, boy. Shiro chuckled. Snapping her fingers, ice chains shot out of the ground and wrapped around Kenji as spikes protruded out from the chain links and pierced into his body. Arg! Kenji shouted out in pain. Asterisk, boom. A pillar of fire suddenly exploded from under Shiro's feet as the chains shattered apart. Naturally, it was part of Shiro's plan since she wasn't too intent on killing this part. As the fire pillar died down, they saw Shiro unscathed. Shiva LVL 100 Snow Woman. HP 49, 230, 000/50, 000. MP 92, 010, 000/100, 000. Seeing how much MP she still had and how little damage they managed to inflict onto her, the party couldn't help but feel as though this is an uphill battle. Well, I suppose you've shown me what you can do. Now die, Shiro said as she snapped her fingers. A huge Tier 4 magic circle expanded out from under her as another Tier 4 magic circle could be seen above them. Feeling the sheer amount of mana that was being emanated from her body, the mages in the party paled since they knew this spell was going to be lethal. We need to run, Chio shouted out in a panic. Within a single moment, a layer of ice appeared on their bodies as dark clouds gathered in the skies. Frozen chandelier, Shiro said simply. Pushing out from the dark clouds, an ice chandelier could be seen as light reflected from the crystal-like sections and blinded them for a short moment. Gritting his teeth, Soseki quickly activated one of the life-saving items he had been saving and sent the party out of the spell's range. Seeing the party disappear, despite her being able to chase them down easily, Shiro disabled her spell and looked towards Lysandra. How was it? Fighting against AB class, shield-type adventurer? Shiro asked with a smile. Annoying. I couldn't penetrate his defenses. Lysandra replied with a frown. While she did try to strike at the areas that weren't blocked by the shield, he would always move his shield to that location just in time to deflect her sword and hit her straight in the body. Well, I suppose it's just experience with fighting against shields. You should have a few spars with Maddie when we get back since she's more of an aggressive shielder. If you expose your gaps like how you did with Soseki, she'll capitalize on it and do quite a bit of damage to you, so you need to be careful with shielders. The best way to fight them is to include a lot of feints into your attacks, Shiro explained as Lysandra nodded. Anyways, we got plenty of time for you to practice. Hell, I can probably make a shield myself and spar with you, but it wouldn't be as effective. Shiro shrugged. However, it seems like we have some visitors, so that we'll have to wait. She continued while looking into the distance. She could sense a few monsters making their way towards them now, and it seemed like they were Snow Woman.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.